Do you really get 30 seconds of free use of copyrighted music? Well, hi, I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and I help creatives and business people in the podcasting industry to cover their legal bases and to protect themselves and the things that they create. And this is Legit Podcast Pro, a short weekly show where I offer you legal tips and information and strategies, and I answer your questions so you can grow your podcast like a pro. And here is the answer. Whoops, I gotta switch things around here. I don't understand what's going on here. Let's go. So, all right. Here is the question that I am seeing with some frequency. Let me make sure I can get it onto your screen so you can see what I'm talking about. From the podcast movement community this time, the question was posed, so as a podcaster, do we still have 30 seconds of free use of copyright? Asking for use for bumper or transition bumper, an intro bumper or transition bumper. So here it is. Let's get the answer going here for you. So Tim asked this question, and we're going to have to talk about the copyright basics. First of all, copyright exists from the moment a new work is created. As long as it's original and it's fixed or recorded or in a tangible form, there's a copyright. And that copyright gives the author of the work or the subsequent purchaser from the author the exclusive rights to make copies, to distribute copies, to make derivative works. That is, to incorporate the work into other things or to make things based on the original, or to perform or display the work in public. And what that means is that when you put a song in a podcast, you're making a copy of the song, you're distributing that copy through the podcast, you're making a derivative work because you're adding it and combining it with other things, and you're performing the work in public. So the only thing you're not doing is displaying it unless you put the sheet music on the screen or something like that. So this brings us into the question of the one defense to copyright infringement that people talk about. It's called fair use, not free use, as Tim included in his question. But fair use is a defense in copyright cases that involves an analysis of looking at 4 independent factors. And you have to look at these. There are no rules of thumb. You have to look at these things all on each time, an ad hoc basis. You have to do it case-by-case basis. So those factors are the nature of the original work, the purpose and character of the infringing work, the nature of the original work, the amount and substantiality of the portion taken from the original work. Hello from Nashville. And the 4th factor is the impact on the market for or value of the original. So where this idea of that there's some mystery number of 30, some rule of 30 seconds free use or something, it comes from that 3rd factor, the amount and substantiality of the portion taken. And the problem is that 30 seconds could be a tremendous amount, and it could be very substantial if the work if it's the most important part of the work, if it's the most important section, if it's the hook or the chorus of the work or something like that. So there is no real rule of thumb here. You shouldn't rely on this fair use thing anyway, because it's a defense, and that means you're getting sued. You're paying lawyers to defend you. Now, some of the comments and notes in the responses to this question on Facebook brought up, ASCAP and BMI. No, you gotta get a license from ASCAP and BMI. That isn't really true. ASCAP and BMI are organizations here in the United States. They're called performing rights organizations, and they exclusively license one particular kind of right, the performance right. But they still don't license the right to make copies. They don't license the right to distribute those copies, and they don't license the right to make the derivative work. So I'm going to get to your question, Facebook user, in just a second. If you want to drop me your name, I'll address you more directly. But anyway, so those organizations only collect for the public performance of the work, and they only do it when it's not combined with other things in what we'd call a synchronization license scenario. And they don't allow for making of copies of those kinds of things. So one of the questions that comes up is how come radio can do this but podcasting can't? And the short answer to that is podcasting isn't the same as radio. It's a different medium. radio technology developed at a time and a place, and these issues were hotly litigated and negotiated in those early days. Ultimately, that is what led to the formation of ASCAP and BMI to collect royalties for songwriters when music was performed on the radio or in a music hall or a nightclub or something like that. So look, ASCAP and BMI collect for certain kinds of uses only, and a podcast use is a broader, bigger use. Also, radio actually does pay. They pay licenses through ASCAP and BMI. They also only deal with terrestrial radio. Digital synchronization and master use and those kinds of things are all handled in a different way through different organizations. So when you are using a piece of music in a podcast, you do need permission. You need a synchronization license to combine the composition with the words and pictures and other things that you might be doing in your podcast. You also need a master use license that addresses the use of the recording. There are 2 copyrights to be involved, so be thoughtful about that. And you need permission to make the derivative work plus the rights to perform the work in public. So my advice is always go directly to the owners of the copyrights. Don't worry about ASCAP or BMI, or if you're in another country, PRS or SOCAN or whatever. Do direct licensing, because the owners of the copyrights can give you all the rights you need if you reach out and ask. So look, making podcast episodes is just not the same thing as spinning a record for, and talking for the first 10 seconds and then letting the record play as you would hear on most radio shows. That's the stuff that ASCAP and BMI covers. But when you're combining and re-recording and distributing worldwide, not just the couple of 100 miles that the broadcast signal can reach, it's a different thing. So the short answer is no, you never actually had a 30 seconds of free use. And if you do hear a show doing this kind of thing, then it's for one of 2 reasons. Either they've gotten the permission and paid fees and those kinds of things, or they just haven't been caught yet. So that's the short answer. Now I'm going to take a quick break and just invite you to join my free Legit Podcast Pro Facebook group and become a part of that, so you can get access to more of this kind of information more regularly. So DR has a question in the comments here. He says, I'm late coming in. I had a question. What about TikTok? They play published music all the time, and then YouTube picks it up. I haven't already covered this, but what you're dealing with here is TikTok and YouTube and Facebook. They've made deals with the music publishers saying, we know you've got this whole big catalog of songs, and we want to be able to use those and let our users use those to make TikTok videos, to make YouTube shorts, to make whatever it is. And they've paid for licenses. They've made blanket deals to cover these things, but they only cover certain songs in their authorized library, essentially. So that's how TikTok and Facebook, and they get to do it. When you're making your podcast, you are the publisher of that podcast, and it's your responsibility to get the licenses that you need. So I hope that answers your question, and brings a little clarity to this. So bottom line, no rule of thumb about 30 seconds, or some people say it's 4 bars of music or any of that kind of thing. It doesn't work that way. Now, what you're doing could be fair use if you're doing critical commentary or it's educational in its tone or those kinds of things. But you have to do that analysis each time for each episode. If you're creating an intro or a bumper or something like that for your show and you're going to use it in every episode, I guarantee it's not fair use. You're going to need the permission. So there you go. So DR is asking a further question. Does that mean when someone has their podcast exclusively on YouTube, you can use the music that they deem good to use? If you are only doing a YouTube video and not distributing your podcast through RSS feed and onto, Spotify and iHeart and all the other places where podcasts are consumed, then I wouldn't call that a podcast, to be really honest. I would call that a YouTube video. And if you're using music that is in the pre-licensed library of stuff from YouTube and your videos are monetized, what happens is YouTube takes that monetization and they split off a piece of the money to pay the owners of the copyrighted music. So yeah, if you're using their good to use music and it's only on YouTube, you're good to go. The thing is, Facebook's library of what's good to go and YouTube's library of what's good to go and TikTok's library of what's good to go may not all have the same songs in those libraries. So you do really have to be careful about what you're doing. My understanding is that a lot of the TikTok videos are getting dropped onto YouTube as well, and that's all well and good. I think the ones that aren't authorized songs are just getting dumped and thrown out. What if you're not monetized on YouTube? Well, I'm not exactly sure what happens. My understanding, though, is that they won't let you post your video with copyrighted music in it unless it's monetized. So they will say, you get a copyright strike, essentially. If you're not monetized, they'll give you the choice. Either let it be monetized so we can give some money to the copyright owners, or delete the music or take it down. What they do is they just delete the whole audio track. So usually that's what happens if they detect copyrighted music in your video and you're not monetized. That's how it works. My videos on YouTube haven't been monetized. I'm going to switch that over pretty soon. But if I hadn't licensed my intro music from Epidemic Sound, which is great, by the way, no affiliate relationship or anything else, there you go. Well, how much are we talking about, you're asking? Hundreds of dollars? It depends. I think that, when it's YouTube and Facebook and TikTok, they've got a lot of bargaining power, and they've made these umbrella blanket licenses that cover everything in the catalog. And, that's great. But when it is you going and asking for the rights to use a piece of music, it could be all over the map. And it sort of depends, what's the song, how famous is the artist, how famous is the song, how big is your podcast, how famous are you, are you making money from it, how much money are you making? All of these questions will go into a negotiation of the license fee for the podcast. And I've seen deals where it's a few bucks an episode, and I've seen deals where it's a few $100 per year, how many ever episodes you make, or anything in between, and it could even be into the tens of thousands of dollars if you're a giant podcaster with millions and millions of downloads, and you want to use the opening sequence from AC/DC's Back in Black, you're gonna pay. You're gonna pay a lot. So that's how it works. That's how music licensing works. And I am planning a video soon where I will actually walk you through the how to go about getting the licenses from people that you need. So I hope that's helpful. And dear, I'm glad I was able to be of help. And stay tuned. I'm coming at you almost every Thursday, almost always at 4 p.m. This week it's a little weird. 4 p.m. came and went, and I had been in the middle of things, and so here we are doing it closer to 5 p.m. So, but stay tuned. I'll try to make announcements and let you know when I'm going to be going live, and we'll come back and dive deeper into this music for podcasts question. But for now, that's going to be it for this episode of Legit Podcast Pro. I'm Gordon Firemark. Come on over to Legit Podcast Pro.